Howdy, howdy. Welcome back to Workshop Wednesday. Today is a What's New edition. We're going to talk about all the updates and features that were released in March of 2021. Now, before we get too far into this, of course, my name is Mercer. Everybody calls me Mercer. Technically Chris Mercer, but I do go by Mercer. I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io. And whether you found us through some of the podcasts and talks that we're out there giving, maybe through some of the content that we've shared with some of the platforms like CXL Institute, Digital Marketer, Social Media Examiner, Measure Summit, maybe you're already a member, whether a free Toolbox member over at measurementmarketing.io or you're already a Measurement Marketing Academy member. However you found us, we are glad that you are here. It's our job to help you learn how to use all these fun, cool tools so that you know your numbers and can ultimately grow your numbers. But we've got to focus on staying up to date on these platforms because they are constantly changing. And so you and I are going to go through today and cover some of the highlights so that you are aware of what changed over the last 30 days or so. Now, with all of our trainings, we always focus on one new thing. So when you find something where you're like, I didn't know it did that, I need to go take a look at that. When you have that action step, write that down. You don't have to watch any more of this workshop. You go take that action. Then you come back, rewatch this workshop, pick it up, your next one new thing. That is what will help to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed and frustrated with all the stuff that's always happening with the world of measurement. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? What's new? The updates released in March 2021. Now we're just going to go ahead and dive right in as we often do. We're going to cover kind of a tour here. I'm going to start with Google Analytics 4. Really nothing overly major in the last 30 days. That's not technically true. There was a couple of subtle things and one major thing. So the subtle things where they are kind of changing a little bit on conversion events. They're trying to get their counts a little more in line with what a standard event might show. So if you throw a purchase versus an app event that's coming through your apps, they're trying to work on some stuff. So I guess there was a little glitch in how they were counting, and evidently that's been fixed or adjusted. So it should be a little bit more useful for us in terms of counts. So if you've ever noticed that your count of a conversion doesn't necessarily match the count of the standard event and there was a disconnect there, maybe that's not there anymore. Again, because of things like that. That's why GA4 is not yet the platform you're going to use as your production platform, at least not yet. It will be, I think, in a very, very short period of time through 2021, maybe the end of 2021, you will probably start using it as your platform. But right now, it's got these little quirks they're working out. So use it, get used to it, and start to understand how to get things set up back there. But again, not quite ready for platform yet. Now, the one big change, and I'm going to go in the admin section here. This was a massive change, actually. So I'm going to come back into here. We're going to go into your data streams. That is, by the way, your data streams is where you will start to see, I think, a lot of these rollouts come through because these are changes that are specific to certain types of traffic streams coming in this case, web traffic. And if we scroll down and we go to more tagging settings, you will actually see where it says I'm gonna kind of talk about two. One of these was already done. This came out a couple months back where they allowed you to configure domains for cross-domain measurement, right? Very useful things you can set up for cross-domain measurement. So you need to be able to do that. However, what they did not allow you to do was adjust what in Universal Analytics is called referral exclusions. So you couldn't say, hey, this website should not be treated as a traffic source. It didn't exist. It wasn't a way to do that. And now there is. So there is referral domains that you can now exclude. And so they are not treated as traffic sources, but instead it goes back to the previous traffic source. Have to set this up. Not an option. You have to set this up. At the very least, it should be set up with your own domain so that you don't accidentally send traffic to yourself. And that's confusing because obviously you're not doing that and you don't want your platform thinking that you're doing that. So you say, okay, anything coming from my site, it's not really a traffic source. Just go to whatever the previous traffic source was and give that traffic source credit for whatever the results are, the events that are coming through. So very important update that came through with that. Make sure that you are doing that. That's why I wanted to make sure we emphasize it here on this workshop. Very, very important. And again, just keep checking web streams, your data streams, but specifically web streams for most of us that are watching this, because that's where I think a lot of these changes are going to come through. So data streams will be key. All right, so enough about GA4. Let's move on to Tag Manager. Now, Tag Manager, and I'm going to this is going to be for some of you who are just tiptoeing into this part of Tag Manager called server side. It's way beyond the scope of today's talk, but there is this other way of doing Tag Manager. But what I really wanted to show you was the gallery here, because it's going to dovetail into what the update was. So now typically and hopefully you already know about templates, that templates exist, and it's a way for third parties to create tags and variables and everything else that they can come in and use. And you can come in and type in, like, for example, Facebook. Facebook took over. They've got customer chat now, Facebook Pixel. They've got the Facebook Pixel by this other company that's evidently doing it. Maybe that's slightly different. This is new, actually. I haven't even seen this one before. But this one is by Facebook, so I would kind of stick with these probably. But you got API stuff through here, like lots of cool things that are back here that third parties, kind of like WordPress plugins, right? The community can help to build everything up. It's very, very cool. Now, this particular search gallery, when you come in here and you're searching the gallery, you're only searching certain parts of the gallery. And that's what I wanted to talk about today in this little update, because this is a thing that you might not realize is actually out there. So we're going to go into our gallery here, and to do that, we're going to go to tagmanager.google.com. So you can just sort of take this part off. And I wanted to show you this was here, tagmanager.google.com/gallery. So when you do that, you come into this page where it says, okay, I've got all the different platforms, all the different templates. There's tags, there's variables, right? Everything here for all platforms. But notice it used to be just web, right? And that's what you actually access when you're in the templates gallery of your own Tag Manager account. Now, for those of you using server-side, there was server-side templates. This did not exist. It now exists. There's only 7, but watch this number, because this number will go up a lot, especially because you see things like this. So if you're ever wanting to do, this CAPI thing that Facebook's talking about, this is how you do it. The Conversions API, CAPI right there. You can use a tag if you're using GTM server-side. Remember, that is not an easy thing to do. You need to be very technically proficient. You must have development resources. You're going to be paying for it. It's a whole other thing. So don't think that server-side tag manager is something quick and easy, because it is neither quick nor easy. It will, with time, I'm sure, get easier, but right now there's a little bit of complications to it. But if you are back there using it, or you started looking for a reason to want to use it, templates was what everybody was waiting for. This is one of those things that's going to make it easier to use, easier and easier to use. And I would imagine as the months go by, server side gets a little more cooked, gets a little bit more accessible to an average user, becomes a little bit easier to start implementing. And then at that point, we'll probably come out with a course to teach you how to actually implement that on your own as well. So lots of cool things coming down here for Tag Manager. There were some other updates, again, a little more technical, but some BigQuery stuff. So if you're using BigQuery as a data source for Google Tag Manager, you've got some support for that as well. So just be aware of that. Next up, Data Studio. And then we're going to cover a couple of others that we don't normally talk about, but I want to make addressing here. Now, Data Studio had a lot of little updates that were kind of very use case, very nuanced, probably may not affect what most of you are doing. So I'm just going to mention them here. And it's things like when you do, sorry, we'll go into create a field here. So if you go to create a field, and if you've ever done case statements where you can say, case if this, then that type of stuff coming through, you can, let me see if I can pull one up here. So if we said, if, and then a certain parameter comes through, right? Or you can say, in the case of when, something pops up in a certain area, you can do all these different statements, right? Again, way beyond the scope of this training. Just know that you can do some really cool stuff if you are already doing really cool stuff back here with the case statements and the if statements and everything else. There have been some changes that you want to be aware of. They've done some conditional expressions. So if is a new one that's back there. It didn't used to exist. It used to be case, like in case this, then that. Now there's an if statement that you can use. And I think that'll actually simplify things for many people coming through here. So you've got regular expressions they've updated a little bit. There's some operators coming through that they've adjusted. So some technical things here. So if you're doing a lot of custom fields with that and you haven't, you thought, I wish they had like an if statement, like a spreadsheet. They now do. That's a big one. So you can kind of see what that stuff is. And that's what you used to have to do with the case statements. So I think if would be a useful thing to take a look at. Understand case statements have changed a little bit. Regex has changed a little bit. And again, I'll give you a link to the changelog itself so you can take a look at those, because they're a little more complicated than what most people watching this probably need, but just know that those are a thing and you might want to take a look at it. The BigQuery connector actually also changed here. So if you ever go into adding a new data source, coming in, when you go to add a new data source and you do a new connector, so that's not the right spot. I want to do that. Let me discard this. So when you go into resource and we actually go to add a completely new data source, which I'm going to do here. So when you go into BigQuery, they changed just a little bit. I actually don't have BigQuery connected on ours, on this account, so I can't show that to you. But there's a more recent way of getting into like just finding your BigQuery reports a little easier because they have a most recent section. So it's kind of a little update, makes it easier to connect into BigQuery, so that you have that. The big one, and this is the one that I want everybody to pay attention to. There were also, and I'll say another little tiny one, some Google GA4 stuff that is now available. So if you connect into GA4, this one actually is the data source for our Google Analytics 4. There is now some Google Ads stuff that's coming through, so you can tie in traffic results from Google Ads to conversion events, stuff like that. So they're continuing to open up more Google Analytics 4 stuff into Data Studio. So again, this is why Google Analytics 4 is not really the platform you're going to use today, because not everything is connected. However, it is definitely going to be the platform of tomorrow because they're starting to roll out more of these updates, and so that Data Studio can be used as, or should be using GA4 as your data source, not necessarily today. But my guess is later in this year, in 2021, you definitely will be using GA4 as your primary data source. That's the goal anyway. Make sure that's your goal, so that by 2022, when they make some announcements about Universal Analytics possibly going away, you're already prepared, right? So that's why it's important to look at that. So that was there. The big change, and this is the biggest change for everybody watching this that uses Google Data Studio, you must know about this feature. Now, I am just in a regular sort of workshop report that we created, right? Just a generic report, set some stuff up. There is a new thing that I suggest all of you turn on. You go to File, especially if you're working with clients and stakeholders who are looking at your reports, because isn't it kind of annoying? This is used to what we had to do. We had to create a page, and we would make a copy of a page, and we would hide that page from the view so we could work in the background and not, have somebody in that report and see what we were doing and then complain about something that they were looking at that was partially done. Well, now they've basically turned on this thing called publishing settings. So technically you have to turn it on. So if you click on publishing settings, you can report publish. This works like WordPress. It works like Tag Manager, where you actually publish changes. So you can work in draft mode. So we're going to turn this on. And now that I click save, we're going to see up at the top here, see where it says draft version. So at this point, everything is a draft version. Now the most current sort of snapshot of this is the new public version. The one that was already published is now published. However, everything else that I do here, if I move some stuff around, even moving things around like this, as I come through, if I'm moving some things around, that is now in draft mode. Nobody else that's seeing the view only link that has the public link to this, if there was such a thing, they don't see me moving things around right now. They don't see me changing data sources or building out charts or changing things to practice and get formulas correct or any of that stuff. They don't see all of that work in progress. When I'm done with the work in progress, you click publish. At that point, you hit publish, and then your changes now go live to the rest of the world, and you can see the published report. And of course, again, at that point, you can come back in, you've got your little draft mode that you can see, and you can flip the versions to say, okay, here's my draft mode that I'm currently in. Let me go see the published one that was out there, and it changes to, let's see what the published one looks like. This was the published one without those changes, right? And if I want to go back to my draft, let's go back to my draft mode, the one that I'm currently working on. Oh, this one's, changed a little bit. So you can, and then you can go back to edit, right? Doesn't mean that draft mode, again, isn't public for everybody. It's just public for you. And then when you want it to go live, you click publish. So this was a massive, massive change for Google Data Studio. It solves a lot of problems if you're working with clients, because I've been there, and our team has certainly been there, when you don't want a client looking at something that isn't ready to look at, but it's been really hard to sort of keep them away from stuff, especially if they're actively in your dashboards all the time. Publishing, it's going to save you a ton of time. However, it is not on by default, so you have to go to File, Publishing Settings, and then flip this to On. And then you will, when you make your changes, you got to make sure to publish them. So if that button's lit up, like this one is, right? It's lit up because there are changes. Think about like a tag manager when you have workspace changes. It doesn't show you workspace changes here, so it doesn't tell you the number of changes you've made or anything. But when you click publish, because this button is lit up, it means whatever this looks like is not live for the world. That's your clue. So when you click publish, you'll notice that this will then go gray. Right? Once it's gray, it means like whatever you've done, this is the public one. This is the one everyone's looking at. And as soon as I make a change, right, even a simple change, it goes light up again. It lights up because it's okay, there's a change. Do I want to publish that change or not? If not, great, I don't have to, right? I'll just, edit that back, and I don't have to make the change. So very, 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 very cool feature for Google Data Studio. All right, let's talk about a couple of other platforms that we don't often talk about. One is Google Optimize, and this is just to make you aware that Google Optimize, if you have, and I'm going to bring up their change log a little bit because I think it'll just be easier to show it. So they don't make many changes to Google Optimize because it's fairly cooked as a platform. However, this is new. So if you use AMP, React, Angular, which I know some of you do, I know some of our clients do, Google Optimize now works out of the box. So have your developers click on this little read more button and you can find it. So there are some that could save a ton of time for many of you if you have AMP, React, or Angular sites and you're using Google Optimize for split testing or personalization or anything like that. This could save you a ton of time. This is the new part of Google Optimize. Again, it's not a platform we get to talk about very often because changes are few and far in between, but this was a big one. So I want to make sure you knew about that. Finally, we end on kind of a downer, I guess. I'm not even really sure. Facebook Analytics, our buddy Facebook Analytics, is going away. So Facebook came out with this analytics platform years ago. It is eerily similar to Google Analytics 4, or I should probably say Google Analytics 4 is similar to Facebook Analytics in that the structure is the same. There's events and you have details of the events, and a page view can be an event, and a purchase can be an event, and a lead can be an event. And that's kind of how Google Analytics 4 is organized. So I really liked when Facebook came out that they had that structure. It was built for cross-device. It answered a lot of questions. It did really, really, really good job. However, I believe Facebook is in the crosshairs of a privacy battle right now. Facebook Analytics, not so helpful for them. So while I do not think that they are losing access to all of this data, I'm sure Facebook's got it. They are no longer allowing you to use it. So this would bother me a lot more, to be honest, if GA4 wasn't around. Google Analytics 4 is around. Google Analytics 4 is better. It just is. I loved Facebook Analytics when it first came out because it had the funnel reports, and those were entirely useful. Those were amazingly useful when compared to Universal Analytics. However, Google Analytics 4 also has funnel reports, and it has so much more that really do make it a much stronger competitor to Facebook Analytics. So again, I don't know why Facebook Analytics chose to kind of call it quits with this. My guess is a little bit of privacy concerns were coming in there, and they figured, you know what, let's just get out of it. Probably didn't have a whole lot of market adoption because Google Analytics 4 came out and just sort of kept the market share. It was a really powerful move by Google to do that. And not a lot of people were using it, or looking at, they just looked at the runway and said, hey, there's, people aren't going to use it. What's the point? Because Google Analytics 4 does it all. So for, I think those reasons, they're calling it quits. The reason I wanted to bring it up to you is if you're not using it, hey, no harm, no foul. If you are using it, get ready because you might not have access to the stuff that you want. There are some ways that you can export some things if you need to. So get ready because the end of June, this whole thing shuts down, which is only a couple of months from now. So be sure that you are ready for that. All right. So with that, what was your one thing? I know for me, when I first found out about the whole Facebook Analytics thing going away, I was like, oh, that's a shame because I did used to use it for occasional stuff, especially those funnel reports. But to be honest, GA4 is a really good alternative. It's actually a better alternative. And we really use Google Analytics 4 for that sort of stuff now. So no harm, no foul. I really liked the idea of the templates coming on board for server-side because that is causing me, and I am reluctantly going into the world of server-side. It's not to say that it's not great. I know it's got pros and everything. I know about how cool it is. However, it's really complicated for the average user. I don't think it's something that a small individual owner business or a small team, if you got a small team, you should just dive right into server side. Just because it's a thing doesn't mean it's a thing you should have to do right now. However, templates are a sign, to, at least to me, that Google Tag Manager, the server side stuff, is going to be getting much, much easier, probably faster than we think it's going to. And at that point, we'll all dive in and we'll figure out how to make this as simple as possible to get something useful and maintain access to what we need to have access to. So I look forward to seeing Tag Manager continue to evolve. And then for Data Studio, for sure, the one big thing for Data Studio for me was publishing. The fact that we can do that, it is massive. Practice that. If you have a Data Studio report, if you use Data Studio at all, turn on publishing. I don't know why they didn't make it default. That seems weird to me. I think maybe eventually it probably will be, but right now it's not default. So you go in, you turn it on, and at that point you can then control when your stakeholders, your client, your team, whoever it is, it's the end user of this report, then you control when they see your changes. And that's such a cool thing. So I was really glad about that. And with GA4, referral exclusions, being sure that you could actually finally complete a true cross-domain measurement sort of setup, but not only defining the different domains, which you could already do. They announced that a couple months back, but now being able to say, okay, we can add in referral exclusions and take care of that. And it was something I wanted to measure, to mention again, because it is a massive, massive update that will help with traffic attribution. And that is a big reason why GA4 hasn't been all that useful, because traffic attribution hasn't really been all that great. But that's going to get substantially better because now we can actually tell Google Analytics 4 what a traffic source is and what a traffic source is not, just like we could with Universal Analytics. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and start to wrap things up. Now, next week, the Workshop Wednesday is going to be a Getting Started edition. So we're talking to our beginners out there, and we're going to talk about creating your first Google Tag Manager account, some pros and some tips to get that up and running. So if you're brand new to Tag Manager, if you're just starting to think maybe about using Tag Manager, that'll be a perfect workshop for you. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can just set up for notifications if you'd like those. And of course, YouTube will let you know as soon as that is ready for you. And thank you all for subscribing, by the way. So there's we're almost up to 1,500 now, which I'm super happy with. So looking to get to at least, can we do like 3,000 this year? I don't know. We'll see where we are in a few months. But thank you, and thanks for those of you who are spreading the word about the YouTube channel, because I've had some people send me some very nice comments about that, and thank you. So appreciate it, and thanks for continuing to share it. If you are interested in really learning about this stuff, measure.tips/Get Academy will take you to the Measurement Marketing Academy. There's a ton of stuff back there. I will very, very, very quickly show you some of those things. Win courses. We have courses on just about everything from Google Analytics topics, getting started, to getting the basics set up, Tag Manager topics, getting started, to the beyond basics. We've got Data Studio topics about reporting, even using Google Sheets if you want to get a little more experience with spreadsheets, what numbers are important to know and why, and of course, measurement strategy, right? What questions should you be even asking? How do you actually optimize once you've got your numbers? What do you do with them? Like, how do you make them better? How do you forecast results? All sorts of cool stuff that is back here in the Academy. These courses are constantly updated. That's why we have the by date. We're actually this week recording, or re-recording, I should say, Google Data Studio Basics. That's getting its update. Again, just definitely worth taking a look at just for the courses alone. That said, we of course have workshops. So there's on-demand workshops, just like this one, these Workshop Wednesdays that you get. These get edited down into what we call student editions. And so they are very focused workshops. So if something's like not big enough for a course, but it's important that you know how to do it, we will create a workshop about it. That's what these all are there for. Again, through the different topics, what's new, getting started, beyond basics, and strategy sessions. Then we of course have the winner circle. This is our little community back here, where people are actually asking questions, helping each other out. You can see with various platforms. So if you have a specific question you need some help with, this is a great community to get back there and to interact with. So we have the Winner Circle community you have access to, the Toolbox with all of our different tools, and of course, Ask Instructor support. So this is kind of like consultant on call, because sometimes you don't want to share public data in the Winner Circle. We get that. Sometimes it's not something you want to do, or sometimes you just want to have a private conversation. So you can with the instructors. You can put your question in here, send us over videos and screenshots. Our instructors, normally within about 24 business hours, will be sending you back responses, typically also through screenshots and videos. So it's quite literally like having a consultant on call, somebody that you can talk with and chat with and see things. Again, not real time, but through this video interaction, it is a whole other level, way, way, way beyond I lost my password kind of support. So that is a feature that Academy members have as well. So if any of that is interesting to you at all, go ahead and join the Measurement Marketing Academy. Again, measure.tips/Get Academy will take you to that page so you can learn more about the Measurement Marketing Academy. Now, if for whatever reason, whether it's budget or just now's not the right time to participate in the Academy, but you are interested in this measurement marketing stuff and you want to participate, get some free tools and practice with some things, like, yeah, you don't get the courses and that sort of thing, but you do get all the tools. We have something called the Measurement Marketing Toolbox. It's pretty much just the tools. And of course, you've got these Workshop Wednesdays that you can watch back there. It is completely free. So that's our free level. So I get it. Not everyone is ready for the Academy, or for whatever reason can't participate in the Measurement Marketing Academy. But you can get a free Toolbox membership. So just go to measure.tip/WW and just email and password, email and first name is all it needs, and it'll send you a password that you can log into the members area, and you'd have access to the Toolbox. So you can use the traffic tracking toolkit, the dashboard planning toolkit, the split test optimization pipeline. There's all sorts of cool tools that are back there that you can play around with. So again, measure.tip/WW. And with that, we'll officially wrap this one up. This has been What's New, the updates released in March 2021. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.